Go 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 go. Go, go, go. We are calling. Welcome to the news. We are calling into the soil. We are calling into the roots. We are calling into the earth. We are calling in a downward facing sense. We are calling in a way that faces down into the earth, into the soil, to be trying to speak to the roots of the ground and have this resonance, have this vibration and this frequency go all the way into the soil, and then go all the way into the roots, and go all the way across the other side of the world. So it hits the core of the earth, and we're able to rattle and rivet the frequency and the core energy of the earth with our business music frequency energy attempt at developing DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios, which is a global foundational mindset to be able to develop a foundational frontier for a new biological development of a company structural sense, so that in essence we're speaking directly to plants, we're speaking directly to the roots. That has to do with an interconnection to all of the world, and this has to do with our marketing strategy as well, because in terms of developing business music, in terms of developing items of output, items of intellectual property, items of continuous communication with a public publication, publicized public information sense, communication, communicative conversation from DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios to the external outside world. It is a matter of connecting with the right business music so that we're able to develop the right inward and outward flow of energy to be able to communicate with the right companies and businesses and type of entities to be able to grow our own brand from a core sense, to be able to try to continue to develop like a biological production sense, so that our entity grows in like a biological way. But we're also speaking to the right entities around the world to be able to try to connect with businesses that are for sale, because in essence, we're trying to connect with those businesses that have real estate attached in essence, but they don't have a broker necessarily attached. So we have the ability to, because we're connected with a real estate brokerage in the meantime, and also at the same time we develop stories, we develop narratives, we develop company narratives and franchise narratives out of specific items and assets that are for sale. So that is the foundational networking process and capability to try to develop scale, and develop like a blood flow, in essence, like a blood flow chasm and cavern and pipelines for energy to be able to travel from one message to another, to be able to reach the world and develop a biological energy system, an ecosystem, and energy flow, rapid energy flow, similar to like blood in a vessel, rushing around the world. That's why we're calling into the center of the earth, because we're trying to call and push air into the roots of the earth. That has to do with a connection and interconnection. Interconnection. That has to do with the roots, that have to do with our messages, to be able to connect with other companies around the world, because we're trying to connect with different companies around the world. And this also has to do with pipelines of communication that don't necessarily exist. We want our message to be able to travel by word of mouth, to be able to connect with people all around the world, the right places and people, and the right demographics all around the world. Like Brooklyn, for example, is in alignment with DINKY, TehC, and the style of DINKY, TehC, and witchcraftery, and just whatever else. Music vibes, and such things like just randomness in this fashion, and peculiarity in terms of people, in terms of vibes, in terms of like smarts and such things that come together and collide. And it's a weird, interesting place where all this weirdness comes together, and it's unknown, unforeseen, unforeseeable, how it all kind of comes together and collides in terms of an energetic perspective, in an energetic sense. The city always changes like from a year-to-year basis because of the weirdness of the people, and that's a similar fashion in terms of the type of connections, in terms of people all around the world that we're trying to connect with, and be able to connect this energy specifically to those types of people all around the world. Exactly, necessarily. It's like the Brooklyns from all around the world. That's exactly where we're trying to reach, so to speak, in terms of a demographic, in terms of people that DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios wants to reach from a foundational sense, to be able to develop the root network of the Brooklyns of all around the world. In essence, the little hidden Brooklyns that it's kind of like Brooklyn's got a little bit of hidden undertones to it. In addition, like that's kind of the nature of it's not like magic, but it's some peculiar energy that's under the fabric of the city of Brooklyn, in essence. And so to be able to try to find the little pockets of that energy that's similar in resonance with other people and other foundational energy holders of this similar peculiar internal storage of this energy, we need to try to speak into the roots of the world to be able to connect with the most valuable and rich pipelines of energy around the world, to be able to connect the root networks for ourselves, to be able to connect to our real estate brokerage partnership, in essence, a core foundational focus of connecting our root business around the whole world. But we're trying to actually find small pockets of the world, so we're trying to start with individual energy, like single people energy, as opposed to just like a conglomerate of like existing energy of root networks and such things, which ultimately we do hope to be able to get there and develop our own conglomerate of energy, and developing energy pipelines, developing our own river and vessel of blood flow energy, of our own type of energy. But it's not blood flow, it's our own blood flow for our own company, of our own brand of DINKY Tech and Change for Game Studios. So it's our own blood. We're almost like inventing our own blood, trying to, by developing this energy that is the blood flow for our circulating energy around the world, by developing companies that don't have real estate brokerages, to helping them sell their businesses for sale. And we're trying to develop little roll-ups out of different companies that are similar and similar energies. And so we're trying to develop the root network similarities among different energies that would be able to coalesce from different places around the world, to be able to make packages from different places around the world, and unique packages similar to making like muffins with like unique wrapping on them, for example, or like cookies that have very peculiar, strange, unknown ingredients in them necessarily, and putting nice little, also strange, peculiar, weird wrappings on the outside of them with also weird artwork and such things that changes every time. And just things like this is mixing it up. It's just an example to be able to give an idea of the type of energies which we wanted to be able to try to package and make unique packages out of assets with like companies, for example, because companies have energy within them. Companies have energies within them, and they have audiences within them, and they're all unique DNA. There's unique DNA within every company that is for sale, and they also have they tend to have real estate attached. And so those are the companies that we're trying to work with to be able to sell. So we can sell single companies or a mixture of different companies, but we want to be able to also be able to coalesce the type of energy that's within the companies as well. But they also have to have real estate attached. So if you know anybody in the world that wants to sell a company, and we happen to be selling in that region in the meantime, which is a global real estate brokerage that we're attached to, so we can sell their company for them if they have not yet established a broker. And that is sort of our strategy in the meantime. So that is how we are trying to enter this game in terms of a conglomerate building process and such things. And in terms of searching the globe and scouring the globe and trying to be able to connect with the globe, it is a matter of something called biological energy production, energy flow, and biological energy production in terms of the company and branding mindset, in terms of global aggregate deal structure, energy flow, in essence, like developing a conglomerate in this fashion by basically analyzing and reanalyzing the DNA from different companies and their audiences basically simultaneously, to be able to try to develop matches in a peculiar way, which is kind of like in flux in terms of developing the specific strategy to try to add the value to each cellular development, to try to develop a global structure that has this global body and global entity. But ultimately it's developing it piece by piece and developing the strategy country by country, and choosing from one country to another, one border to another, to be able to choose fabrics to be able to weave together, to be able to make packages, again, like cookies that are made from weird seeds from all over the world that are unknown and such things, similar to that. And we're developing cookies, but we're also like making a package of 12 cookies, and so all of those cookies have different seeds from different places all from around the world, in essence. And it's also nice and unique, pretty package that will be sold to some specific buyer necessarily. And those two things, the hearts of both of those things, the hearts of the cookies and all of the audiences and the DNA and all of those things, have to align with the energy of the buyer of those cookies as well. So those two things, they're unique products. Every time they're unique products, like somebody making a statue that's a unique statue, in essence, like a one-off situation. And every time that's kind of how we're doing it. We're making like one-off statues. It's like custom art basically, but in the form of companies and company structures and company packaging basically. But at the most basic sense, we're trying to use our partnership leverage with real estate brokerage to be able to try to develop sales around the globe, and using our weirdness to be able to try to connect with the weirdness aspect of our audiences around the world, to also be core foundational representatives for future reference, for the company, for the branding, for the continuous business music which we're trying to emit, in essence. And this has to do with energy architecture, energy flow architecture around the world, in essence. And that has to do with like, in essence, like a conglomerate energy that has to do with a lot of linearities to biology, deal structure, aggregate deal structure, and flow. Some of those core structures are not exactly aligned in front of me, but regardless, another item to do is something called plates, which are basically aligned business conceptual opportunity, because that's our main meat, and that's our main meat and potatoes for our business around the world. But to get into side ventures as well. Side ventures are something that we also wanted to make a template for. And to be able to do that, we call them plates. Side ventures are called plates. So we have like a sell and a buy side to each plate, every plate. And to be able to develop them with people, to develop like partnership deals with people, collaboration deals, like side deals, like in essence, you could call them collaboration deals, sponsored by deals, because they're sponsored by people, and they're basically the plate energy is run off of other people. So a way to be able to develop a structure to be able to just get a deal on the table with people, basically when entering a new partnership or a brand new cold, basically like a cold message, to be able to cold message someone and get their hopefully they get their 2 cents into the game and get them to actually participate, not knowing you ever before, but to be able to enter a deal, actually start a deal, enter a deal. Like you develop a range. There's a bit of a range where like on the bottom end it's necessary to be able to develop, on the top end, it's necessary to develop an understanding if there's kind of resistance, like based on an initial question and an initial proposal, to be able to try to do something and to be able to develop a collaboration. If it's not something that's typically within their typical day-to-day operations or the typical way that they operate, that they might have resistance to making a particular deal structure. So in addition to that, you can kind of come back and just ask, what is everything that you would possibly need if we had infinite resources to get you on the table, to be able to get an idea of their high end, what is the top end, what is the necessity to be able to develop the top end of the range, which is the top end minimum. What is the top minimum? What is the most least that we can get you to get into the deal with? What is the least that you need, in essence, to be able to just enter a deal on the table, but just start with pretending like you have infinite resources. What would it take if we had infinite resources to get you into a deal? And then just see where that conceptualization goes. And then once you if they go with something too flamboyant or over the top or outrageous or peculiar or nutty, to work with that, then you just say, hey, at least on the bottom end, on the bottom side, that it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing to enter a deal. So then you have the low end, to be able to develop a low end structure based upon doing something which is better than nothing, to be able to develop a bottom end floor from where you're trying to build up and work with, and find somewhere in the middle to be able to enter a deal. But just like in terms of deal, like you're just talking about a collaboration, but in essence you want to talk about also paying them, because you want to pay them on the front end. So you're saying you want to hire them, even though it's a collaboration in essence, because you can forward the value of the deal down the line in essence. And there's a little bit of a deal structure in this fashion also, which is piped into the development of sales of businesses as well, which also has to do with seller finance in terms of like selling real estate to help us along in terms of selling businesses that are attached to real estate as well. So it's like an additional financing option for us in terms of selling real estate that have businesses attached basically, but we're trying to target businesses that don't have real brokers attached. Real estate brokers attached. So those are two sides to it. We either have, we're talking about our specific focus and industry, or we're talking about any industry. If you're talking about just trying to partner with anybody in any industry for any reason ever, then you can use the plates methodology, the plates mentality, by getting them to just throw up any conceptual, like to make a deal. If you had infinite resources to get them to paint the picture, what would be the minimum that they would need if you had infinite resources to get them on the table, to get them on the map? And then if they go too high or if they go outrageous, then you say, you've at least, it's better to have some deal than nothing. Like, so if you're going to walk away, then you're thinking about, okay, like you've got something in front of you versus nothing, right? So like with that in mind, that range, you can develop a little bit of a range. So at least you've got something on the table. That's a little bit of a range of them definitely being on the table, because there's definitely got to be an awareness that like there's an interest to have something as opposed to nothing, if that can just be a mindset, a minimum to a maximum in terms of getting them on the table, getting a deal onto the table in essence. So every time there's a deal on the table and there's never not. And in essence, and the last thing we'll talk about is having always having smart people around you and always being the dumbest person in the room. Basically, in terms of growth, it's always good to have be the dumbest person in the room. In essence, to be able to continue to try to pipeline yourself into continuous more advantageous situations, and to be able to step your game up on a continuous basis. And at the same time, we did a little bit more research in terms of what is global aggregate deal structure and how that aligns with biology, as well as why to use an aggregate deal structure, as well as global aggregate deal structure as a systems energy metaphor in essence, and architecture and basically architecturing flow, which has like a lot of core parallel concepts, and at the same time, energy flow as a deal and deal structure is a significant part of what I wanted to just bring about in this episode, maybe for future references and future episodes, of how to deconstruct and decompose and make basically like biological projections based on continuous research, based on like biological projections of different deal structures, conceptual deal structures that have to do with science, that align with basically biology, because we're talking about energy flow, we're talking about value creation, value as energy, to be able to make money, but to translate that into money, into monetary energy, because if you create value, which is philanthropy energy is something I'm always talking about developing, because that's the core energy to be able to develop value. That's the core energy to develop value. And when you stack that value, that equals money, that equals monetary energy. But that's the best way to get it. That's the cleanest, most purified way to get that energy, monetary energy. And so continuing to talk about and dissect and talk about deal flow in terms of like biology, biological structures, and energy flow as a deal, that is in essence how we want to try to continue to reconstruct and deconstruct the future of a lot of this podcast, is to be able to like stack biological lessons, basically scientific, biological, logical lessons, to be able to continue to talk about energy flow stacking in terms of corresponding to the root nature of energy flow connections and pipeline connections and such things between root information and data structure, network, connectivity from one country to another, so that there is an innate connection, hopefully, with the news as things are unfolding, not the news within this podcast, but the news within the greater world, the macro news within the financial markets, within the greater world, to be able to connect those items with the things and the actions that we're taking as DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios, as a company, as a brand, as we continue to try to grow and align, in other words, in essence, alongside of macro energies, and we're going to try to parallel that with biological corresponding, diagrams and conceptual visualizations, to be able to develop ongoing energy flow, mechanics that are more or less ideal, to be able to try to parallel visualizations alongside of the energy flow that we are trying to develop, and the momentum that we're trying to develop as DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios. DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios, to continue to try to develop philanthropy energy around the world by using our root structure network around the world, to be able to just somehow tap into pipelines of communication, and developing a spreading of this energy, hopefully like just weird ways, like electric through the earth. That's why we have an upside down rainbow, in essence, in our logo for DINKY, TehC, and Change for Game Studios. In the 3D3 POD engine, there's an upside down smiley face rainbow that is half electricity and half the upside of a graph on a stock market chart or what have you. Anyways, that's all for now. Thanks again, DINKY, TehC. Peace. Bye. Peace.